Okay. Okay, listen to me. I'm going to let you pop these things, but we have some limitations. Limitation one, I can't give you anything to pop them with. So you are going to need to use something like a writing utensil that is yours. Now, don't get ahead of the game here, because I want to save you some mess. Because understand that these eggs have been in first distilled water and now tap water. They are under a fair amount of pressure. Like, they were in a hypotonic solution for, 3 days. And so they've built up all this pressure. And when you put a hole in them, that pressure is going to go whichever direction the hole points. So, like, if you take your egg, you're going to dump the water out first, right? Okay. But then if you take your egg and, like, go straight down, the pressure is going to go this way. And you're going to have egg all over your face. You're going to cry. Of course. I wouldn't say it if it hadn't happened. I wouldn't have to do this if people didn't understand basic pressure. Now listen to me. What you're going to do instead is you're going to tilt your cup a little bit. Create some space between the egg and the side of the cup. And then you're going to ease your pencil or whatever down the side, poke the hole in the side so all that pressure goes into the wall of the cup. Make sense?
Yeah.
Then you're going to look at what happened to your egg. I don't know. It's kind of different every time. It's always a little interesting. It might just look like an egg that smells like vinegar still. Sometimes parts of the eggs harden. If we were doing the full version of this experiment and remote kids at home, I encourage you to, we always bring weird stuff in to put the eggs in. And one of the really interesting ones is rubbing alcohol, because it chemically cooks the egg. Like literally makes it solid like a hard-boiled egg by denaturing the proteins just like heat would. It's really interesting stuff. Anyway, yeah, so sometimes something has gone on that has hardened parts of the egg. Check that out, poke around a little bit, and then when you're done, the whole thing goes in the trash. Not the sink. Okay, the water goes down the sink, but not like the egg yolk or white. The whole shebang goes in there. Good? Enjoy. Okay. Here's the deal. We are heading into Thanksgiving break. Some of you can already taste it. Then when we come out of Thanksgiving break, we are going to be remote for 2 days, which is going to be real interesting. Like running a full schedule, a block schedule of classes during your day at home. It's going to be different. For that reason, and for the reason that this is a hard unit, this is a hard chapter 8 and 9, which is photosynthesis and cell respiration, are difficult. Here's what I plan to do. I'd like to introduce these 2 chapters and then get the absolute bare minimum done that I know the state likes to test you on, and then stop without a major test. There might be a little quiz before break. That's it. Then we'll move on to friendlier skies, mitosis and genetics and some fun stuff. Sound good? But that depends on you guys bearing down and doing good these last 4 days. Okay, good deal. Because you got to know at least, this is our photosynthesis chapter, but before we do anything about cellular energy, there's a molecule you need to know about. And it's not probably the one that you first think of. What's the energy molecule you first think of with regards to cells? What's the molecule your cells use for energy? Abby? That's the cell part that does it. You're absolutely right. Mitochondria is definitely involved. It's not water. Maybe you don't. Armani, that's right where I'm going. That's the one I'm looking for. The one that most people think of first is glucose. But Armani's exactly right. Armani's the king of like pulling out a hard answer when nobody else knows it. Have you noticed that? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. Made of 3 parts. Well, I guess 5 if you, depending on how you count. But there's always adenine, and there's always ribose, and then there's 3 phosphates. These are the basic shapes of those things. And put them all together, and you get ATP, which looks like this. Don't draw that. Don't draw the pink thing. We'll draw it on the next page. But really what you need to know about this molecule is all in one spot. Really the business end of an ATP molecule. That 3rd phosphate. That 3rd phosphate, is like Tristan in history class. Tristan, how do you feel about history class? So like you don't want to be there? So like if you get an excuse to get out of there, you'll take it? And when you're walking out of there, how do you feel? A little bit more energetic than you were? Like history. Getting out of history, like, yes, going to biology. So ATP's 3rd phosphate is like that. It does not want to be there. And it will take any excuse it can to pop right off of there. And when it does, a little bit of energy is released from that chemical bond right there. A little piece of energy, little burst of energy is released. And it turns out your cell is entirely built around using those little bursts of energy from ATP's 3rd phosphates popping off to do everything. Like all the stuff in the cell is built around ATP's little energy burst. This reaction right here, where ATP becomes ADP and a separate phosphate. That is the one I want you to draw. The light bulb doesn't have to be perfect. It could just be a burst of energy. What's important is that phosphate is separated. Now it's a phosphate by itself plus ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. That reaction, by the way, is totally reversible. And it's reverse, taking a phosphate and an ADP and turning it into ATP is basically what cell respiration is all about. When you break down glucose, what you're doing is making more ATP by sticking ADPs and phosphates together. So that reversible reaction is basically what cells use to power everything. For example, this might ring a bell. Do you remember the sodium-potassium pump? Yes. Remember how we said that was active transport? That was a thing that cost energy every time you ran it? See that right there? That's ATP's 3rd phosphate getting stuck onto the pump to power it for 1 round. They're not showing you the rest of the ATP molecule, right? They're just showing the phosphate. But that's how it works. ATP, when it powers something, usually what it looks like is ATP comes in, sticks its 3rd phosphate onto something, and then goes away. And the 3rd phosphate brings that energy with it, powers the thing 1 time, and then falls off. That's what's happening. That's what's running the sodium-potassium pump. So that's a good example of use of energy in a cell. So is hooking a motor protein onto a cell part and walking it along a microtubule to the other end of the cell. That costs energy in the form of ATP. And really anything you can think of that the cell does that costs energy spends ATP is enough for you.
Like for 1 minute.
No, like when you grow up, At what point, at what money amount are you like, okay, I'm good. That's enough money. Like, how much do you want to, if you were going to take a chunk of money to live on the rest of your adult life on, how much would you want? $2 million. I like it. Okay. And you're going to keep that $2 million as cash in your house, right? Is that a good idea? Everybody's shaking their head. Why? Why, Tristan? Somebody could take your money if you kept it all in cash in your house. Riley, what else?
It's more available for you to just like grab it and just spend it.
Oh yeah, okay. So you don't trust yourself. Like you're more likely to spend that money if you don't keep it out of your own sight. I fully agree with that. What if your house burns down? Yeah, so we can kind of say that like cash. What were you gonna say, Riley?
Police would get suspicious if you just had $2 million lying around your house.
Doesn't look good. Why is that dude got $2,000 in ones, $2 million in ones, in 100 briefcases in his attic? What's he up to? Yeah, so cash is maybe not the most stable way to keep your wealth. Agreed? Lots of things could happen to it. So that's a pretty good analogy for ATP. It's not good long-term energy storage. It's cash. You can spend it anywhere in the South. But remember, we said it's like Tristan in history. Every once in a while, Tristan will just leave. I go to the bathroom. Not here. Every once in a while, ATP's third phosphate will just pop off of there. Can't get it back. It's done. It's unstable. And it's not very much energy. It's exactly the right amount to do a job, but there's tons of molecules that are much more energy dense. Matter of fact, glucose has almost 100 times the energy of ATP. And is really easy, given the cell machinery that you have, especially the mitochondria. It's really easy to convert the energy in glucose to ATP. So why keep so much ATP around? When your food that you eat gets broken down into glucose anyway, just keep it as glucose for a while. And that's what you do. You basically keep enough ATP on hand to do immediate jobs, and you store the rest of it in other molecules. Glucose is a big one. You can jam glucose together into a kind of starch called glycogen, which you keep in your liver, which you can chop glucoses off of whenever you want. If you got a whole lot of energy, you're going to eat like a large pizza all by yourself. That's when your body starts leaning on the fat molecule, because fat, pound for pound, is the most energy dense molecule you can make. So if you're faced with a huge glut of calories, then your body starts making fat molecules. It's costly, but it puts a lot of energy in a very small space, which you need. You know, in case you're starving later, which never happens now, but did to your ancestors. Are you still, my last question of the day, are you still smarter than a Harvard graduate?
Yes.
We've done it twice, right? The first one we did during the ecology unit. It's coming back to haunt you. You remember? Remember the lady handing the log to the dude? He's like, okay. Seed and log. The mass would come from a lot of places, I'd guess. I guess it came from the soil, the nutrients in the soil and the water. Chris, where does it actually come from? From? Absolutely. Comes out of thin air. Raise your hand if you remembered that. Okay, all right. Good. Yeah, straight out of thin air, and that is where we're going this chapter. Is how you get glucose. How do plants build the stuff they build out of thin air? Riley.